Okay, it's Pipes Drums here with pipe major Trevor Takahashi of Los Angeles, who's just started the City of Angels pipe band in LA. A new concept for a band, kind of a refreshing concept. We thought we'd check in with Trevor about the new band. So what prompted you, Trevor, to start the City of Angels pipe band?
Yeah, thank you, Andrew, and thanks to Pipes Drums. It's awesome to be here and to, I appreciate the time to speak about the band, and we're super excited. Yeah, I mean, I think, we're at a time in the culture of the world like where it's time to kind of talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion like in a bigger way. And um, I am super passionate about it as a person of color and as a person from the LGBTQ plus community, like to create a safe space for people to engage with each other, to feel like they can bring their entire authentic selves to the circle, and like really like that I think creates so much more engagement. Like when you're creating music, like if you can be yourself and bring your whole self to the table and like not have any of that fear, like the I think the ability for you to like create awesome music and to further the art of Scottish piping and drumming like just is an um exponentially better.
Hmm. So the idea of the band is to reach out to the LGBTQ plus BIPOC communities, to kind of proactively welcome them.
Yeah, I mean it is, and I think that there's so many bands and that are inclusive, and like we have people of all walks of life in bands right now, but the difference here is we want to kind of build an organization who one of the major tenets of that organization being that we're kind of thinking first about like having that safe space and like having that seat at the table for people who may not always be seen as like the archetypal piper or drummer in the Scottish community. So yes, I think part of it is creating a competitive band, and then the other part is like utilizing that talent in the band to do community outreach and to do some of these smaller like educational programs where we reach out to those communities that are LGBTQ plus or BIPOC. So
Yeah. And so, okay, let's say a couple of years from now, or even, right off the bat, are you going to, is the band open to other, people who aren't in those communities? Is it,
oh, 100%. Yeah,
yeah.
100%. It's like I think the thought is to create a safe space for everybody, and I mean I think that takes like in the LGBTQ plus community we talk a lot about allyship, and like I think that blends into all walks of diversity, equity, inclusion is like you need to have also allies with you to kind of help the cause and to like keep people accountable for when things do go a little bit astray. I think it's like I think that's a huge component of it is having people who aren't part of those communities but who are advocates and who are kind of your allies that are helping to like make that space equitable and to make that a safe place for everybody and to keep everybody in check in a way.
Hmm. And I think you mentioned competition. So do you see this as a competitive organization going forward, as well as a kind of performance-based band?
Yeah, I mean, it's like what's piping and drumming if there's not a little bit of competition? I think that's what keeps the spark alive and what keeps us a little bit more motivated and sitting up in our chairs and putting in the work and having a goal to kind of reach, in terms of like not prize goals, but like, we want to sound like this, or we want to play this tune, or we want to like, push ourselves musically. We do want to have a competitive unit and then, kind of expand upon that. Like maybe it's the initial band and then like some educational programs, and then after that if there's room for those people who are students like to start something else, like then we'll kind of create what needs to be created in order for them to get in there, because I think competition is the biggest motivator and driver of growth and engagement and all that good stuff, where it's like if you didn't have it, and I think we've seen that in the pandemic, without competition it kind of is like, what are we doing? Like we can play all day by ourselves or do virtual competitions, but it's just not the same.
Yeah, yeah, good point. It's made us realize a lot of things, I think. But, in thinking about it in general, in your experience, I think you started around the year 2000. You were formerly before this, the pipe major of the the Pasadena Scots pipe band, very good grade 3 band in California. But in general, do you think that those who identify as LGBTQ plus, the BIPOC community, do you think they're welcomed in pipe bands as it is right now?
Yeah, I mean, I totally think like I have personally not had like a terrible experience or experience where someone was like, you can't play here, or you can't, be in this band, or you can't do this. I think it's a little bit more nuanced than that. It's like I think that people are allowed to be in bands that are from those communities, and that's great. And I think, I've seen so much camaraderie across bands, inside bands, of people like just welcoming people like as their own into the band. Um, the nuance here is like to start there first and to say like this isn't, like you shouldn't have to feel like you're coming as an outsider into a thing that's already established, where you feel like you might need to like check parts of your identity at the door, or say like, like I'm not I'm worried that my bandmates are gonna know that I have, a partner who's same sex, or I'm worried about my bandmates not respecting my pronouns or misgendering me, like things like that, like, or just feeling safe. Like I think a lot of women face issues of feeling safe in bands as well, like that are, sometimes a little bit, it gets a little problematic sometimes. So, I think that's the thought here, is to kind of have that approach on the onset, like as part of the DNA of the band.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, interesting. It's we've always tried to put some sunlight on issues that might not be talked about in the past in the tradition of piping and drumming, and just to get the conversation out there, to get discussion, to get it out in the open, and talk about some things. And I think the City of Angels, I think you're onto something really kind of interesting here, that there'll be a lot more conversation too. But Trevor, what would be your advice right now, to pipe bands regarding equity for all?
I think it's and this is the thing, I think it's difficult for people, but I think it's just the being willing to listen and to learn. I mean, being wrong is not bad. It's not, if someone says, that that wasn't right, or like, what you said, was kind of not okay to that person, like that's fine. Like the response doesn't need to be a defensive, like, no, I'm, I didn't mean it that way. It can just be, I totally didn't understand how my comment might have come across that way. Like, please teach me like how that was wrong, and like what I can do to be better like later. Cause I mean, we're all learning, like, myself included in many ways. Like I'm always learning like what's people's perspective and experience, and like how I can be more sensitive to that. I mean, I'm not a woman. I don't come from that experience. Like there's some things that I hear that I'm like, this, please teach me. Like I want to learn like what you go through, so that I can be more empathetic. I think empathy is such an important piece, and like just putting yourself in that person's shoes to say like, I'm not from that community or from that experience, but I empathize, and I'm going to listen to what it is to be in that world, and like, and to be like, that you're my friend, like, and you're my bandmate, like I want you to feel okay and safe, and like, and to hear your experience, so that I can be a better person for you and for everybody else later.
Yeah, that's so well put. I think if we can, yeah, considering that we thrive on competition and thrive on being graded and thrive on being judged, and we learn from as we go along, and sometimes, ironically, there's kind of a sensitivity about that in
Yeah,
other areas. But the more that we get things out in the open and talk about them, I think the better it's going to be for everybody, and the more people involved, the more numbers we can have in the ranks to compete
absolutely.
against the other bands. So.
Yeah, I'm super grateful that you're creating the space here, like in such a big platform, and to talk about these things, because I think it's super important, and it's like major kudos for putting this kind of conversation out there.
Well, it takes people like you to keep the conversation going, and best of luck, Trevor Takahashi, as pipe major of the new City of Angels pipe band that's reaching out to LGBTQ plus and BIPOC communities to expand the horizons of piping and drumming. We'll look forward to seeing the band go from strength to strength.
Thanks so much, Andrew.